Audio Unleashed.
We should always maintain an improvisatory framework.
Okay.
But framework is not really. You can have a framework for improvisation, just like in jazz. You have chord changes, but then you improvise over them. And I think we should make the Audio Unleashed podcast the same thing.
Okay.
Kind of.
Okay. Cool. Yeah, man.
All right.
I'm for it. I could improv that.
This is my plan.
Okay.
So, are we recording yet?
As long as somebody has a plan. Yes, we're recording. Tape is rolling. Hey, Brent.
Hi, Dennis.
Been a couple of weeks since I talked to you, man.
It has been. And a lot has happened in those weeks.
That's true.
We've discovered new developments in audio that are very important to certain people and not important at all to others, but hopefully important to the people who listen to the Audio
Unleashed
podcast.
Yeah.
We're supposed to say this is the Audio
Unleashed
podcast, just for those people who skipped over the intro.
I think they might have picked up on that by now.
Yeah. And you are Dennis Berger. You are an audio and video and home automation writer of 20 plus years experience. And you are currently writing for Wirecutter, I know, and also for Soundstage. And you have written for Cinelux and Residential Systems and Home Entertainment and God, I can't remember. So many.
Oodles of others.
Yeah.
And you, Brent Butterworth, my mentor, my friend, writing for Wirecutter, have written for Soundstage. I've written for most of the publications that I wrote for. You did a long stint with Sound and Vision, though, and I did not. You did a long stint with Home Theater Magazine, and I was with them. I was with them for like one issue before I got unceremoniously canned when they got bought out. Yeah,
unceremoniously canned when they got bought out is a story that every writer and magazine and website editor can tell.
Yeah, and you had a good run with Dolby Labs too as their marketing director.
Well, no, I didn't have a good run. I had a run. I was there. Well, that's not to disparage Dolby or to disparage me. It just wasn't a great fit.
Yeah.
I mean, I got the job done. I showed up on time.
You did a good job with DVD audio.
Yeah. Look how successful that was.
I didn't think that one through, did I?
I nailed that one. Yeah, it was a marketing coup. I had no wins there, except I did entertain some of my friends in the press pretty well. And created some nice tchotchkes to hand out at trade shows. So, anyway,
entertain me here and now, sir. What are we talking about this week?
We're going to start with a press release from the company called Xperi, and that's Xperi. And Xperi is a company that has bought a lot of technology licensing companies, and they are best known as the owners of DTS. The well-known Dolby sort of competitor that licenses a lot of technology. Anyway, they just sent us a release, perhaps unwisely, that. But we'll see. We're not here to judge yet.
We're not.
Yet.
Okay.
The introduction is not for us to judge. The introduction is for us to leave the question open as to whether we'll judge.
I'm learning things from you all the time.
Yes. So you got to learn how to entertain people, man.
Yeah.
So besides just having a deep, resonant radio voice, you gotta get past that. That's not enough. So anyway, they accelerated their expansion into smart TVs, and this press release talks about all the benefits that they can bring to that market. And we should discuss Play-Fi, because I think Play-Fi has not been discussed that much recently, even though it's, still out there, still popping into new products. And we should kind of revisit Play-Fi because it's been about 10 years since it was launched.
Yeah, we should.
And you happen to be a Play-Fi expert. I'd say so.
I mean, I think I've put hands on just about every Play-Fi product released. So maybe just by virtue of experience, sure, whatever.
Yeah, well, we'll talk about Play-Fi.
Okay.
And then what's next?
Our friend Daryl Wilkinson also happens to be a patron of ours, sent me a press release and a website for an exhibit called Hi-Fi Listening Room Dream Number 1. This is at the Listen Gallery in London. And this is a project centered on a gentleman called Devin Turnbull. And basically the whole premise is that he has set up sort of a hi-fi listening space / shrine and a museum for people to just drop in and, quote, surrender to the act of listening with rare intention to recorded and live music. They're also having some little DIY speaker building seminar kind of things. There's a shop. So I think we've both got some opinions about this, and we're just going to dig in and talk about it. And what's after that?
We're going to discuss an article that you brought to my attention from PLOS. What is PLOS? PLOS.
Public Library of Science 1. So I think a lot of people know, like, scientific white papers are often behind quite strict paywalls, right? Just to read one paper, you've either got to be subscribed to a journal or something like that.
That's why I'm an AES member, so I can read the papers.
PLOS One is sort of its whole intent is people submit their scientific papers to PLOS One, and literally anyone can read them. So it's an open scientific journal, and I read them quite regularly because there's some good research published there, good peer-reviewed research published there, and I don't have to go begging my scientist friends for a PDF. So
okay. And this article is titled "Warning: Humans cannot reliably detect speech deepfakes." What are they? Well, very briefly, since you're the AI expert, what are they talking about? Very briefly. So, don't give away the whole game here.
I won't. Basically, deepfakes is the deepfakes that they're talking about is taking and sort of synthesizing somebody's speech patterns, and then you take and type in text to speech, and you make it sound like that person said it. So I could sample your voice and then make it sound like you're saying the Grateful Dead is the best band ever, and I love the Eagles, right? So anyway, the question is, could I play that recording for people, and then could people tell that it's fake? And that is what this paper seeks to answer. So,
wow.
Yeah.
And so we are going to have, for our Patreon subscribers only, we are going to do a technical deep dive. And you should be introducing this one.
Oh, yeah.
It's your turn.
That's true. I didn't realize we had to take turns, but
we have to take turns.
Yeah, this is a blog post that you sent me from. Is it pronounced Rel or Ariel? I've never heard it actually said.
Everyone's it actually stands for, I think, Richard Edward Lord, who was the founder of the company, but has since been purchased by someone else. Yeah. And company known for making subwoofers, for making audiophile targeted subwoofers, which is something most companies don't. Most subwoofers are kind of more targeted towards home theater.
Right.
And so they make audiophile. You keep going. You're supposed to be doing this. It's your turn, man. I don't want to jump all over you here.
Like we don't have to step on each other's toes. But anyway, yeah. So Rel, I guess, should I say? You never really answered that question for me. Rel?
It's okay, Rel. Good. Everybody says Rel.
Okay, well, I'm going to say Rel then. So yeah, Rel has this quite old blog post that you turned me onto a few months ago, and it's just we've been wanting to talk about this, but keep putting it off. But anyway, what they're doing is talking about subwoofer measurements and wattage and DSP and what it all means, and effectively, does more watts equal better sound? Does DSP equal better sound? And I think they definitely have their opinion. I think you and I also have opinions about this. So we're gonna break that down. We're gonna talk about the post, and then we're gonna respond to it.
Yeah, and we should say they're also, pretty heavily criticizing another manufacturer whom they're vaguely veiling
Mm-hmm.
I mean, anybody who knows subwoofers knows who they're talking about. And they are basically saying that by their, this manufacturer is saying their sub measures and, it's 350 watts, and Rel is saying, no, it's not even close to that. But then we're going to get into that. I really want to dig into that because I'm a subwoofer measurement guy.
You are. But first,
we have to thank.
We've got reader email, man.
We have to thank a reader. We have reader email. Who is this guy who emailed us?
Chris Heinen, our dear friend, also a patron, former colleague at Wirecutter. And he has moved on to other things, but yes, he sent us a nice email in response to our last episode in which we were deconstructing the whole concept of audiophile network switches. So yeah, he doubled down on our criticism of this whole concept. And what did he say, man? He brought the facts for this one. Do you want to just read his email that he sent us?
Okay, here's what Chris said in his email. Listening to the podcast at the gym today and the bit on Ethernet dongles that do absolutely nothing, as someone that did have to take networking in college and still sometimes deals with it, there are two very clear reasons it does absolutely nothing. And he's referring to the product, the Paul Pang product, that's like an Ethernet cable that goes between two unused switch outputs.
Yeah, it's a patch cable,
switch.
like a 6-inch patch cable.
Yeah, it's a patch cable, and it goes between two of the unused switch outputs, and supposedly
EQs it
and creates all these different sounds. And we said this is a bunch of baloney. Chris's statement is considerably more opinionated than ours. So he says, okay, two reasons. Ethernet switches route traffic only to the exact ports that it needs to go to. Back when hubs were a thing, they sent it to everything, but switches maintain a table of which port to use for each address, so the data packets would never pass through the ports with these tuning cables attached to it. I didn't know that. Thank you, Chris. That means you're hanging this thing off of a port that's unused and nothing goes through that port. The switch does not use that port unless it knows there's some legitimate internet device hooked up to it, right? Yeah. So, or I should say a legitimate network component. All right. Second reason, every music service uses TCP as its packet standard, at least Airplay, Roon, Spotify, and all the major ones. TCP includes a simple CRC checksum on all the data as part of the packet header. So if these did change the data, that packet would arrive at the destination. It would see the CRC is incorrect, and it would ask for the packet again. This will repeat over and over again forever, and nothing would ever play if these cables did change the data. So this is a bunch of just. He really highlights way more than we did or could what a bunch of just baloney this is, and in my view, what a bunch of baloney. I mean, it just sort of shows that there's I feel bad for audiophiles who fall for this because they're just going to waste money, and they might think they hear a difference, but they don't. But I feel appalled by anybody in the press or anybody who's an influencer who would embrace this crap, because it's just some guy who doesn't understand how this stuff works, cobbling together something, and he puts it in the system and goes, "Oh, I hear a difference." And maybe he goes to a trade show and says, "Oh, you'll hear a difference too," because like every good stereo salesman, he tells you what you're going to hear before he plays it and then after he plays it, right? Yep. And it really bothers me that so much of the high-end audio is just based on this same kind of nonsense.
Yeah. I was thinking about it the other day after we had this discussion that it hasn't been that long that we really had to worry about networking concerns in audio. I mean, 20 years at most since networking became a consideration in an audiophile system. And I thought, well, most audiophiles were already old by then anyway, so they're not really going to keep up with new technology, and there's a lot to keep up with. But then again, something you just said was like a bat signal to the sky for me. Does it really matter? They're using the exact same flawed logic that people have been using for years to sell $9,000 power cables and this, that, and the other. It's the exact same sort of shenanigans. So to protect yourself against this stuff, you can't just learn about networking technology and learn about power supplies. I mean, you've got to learn critical thinking. You've got to learn to look at a claim and go, okay, how how likely is that claim, no matter what the field of interest is? So
okay,
yeah.
So we should move on to something that really does make a difference, and that's DTS PlayFi.
I forgot to take my blood pressure medicine.
So we got a release from DTS PlayFi, who still send me. A lot of these people just stop sending me releases.
Yeah, they'll learn one day.
But then I'll just go find them, or you'll send them to me, or who knows? Some colleague will send them. And because what PR people sometimes don't know is that if there's a particularly stupid press release, all the journalists send it to each other and go, isn't this a stupid press release? So, I mean, it happens like every day.
Yeah.
So anyway, DTS has the PlayFi is their sort of. It's a competitor basically to Google Chromecast and to
Apple AirPlay and Sonos and Hios. And
it's something that lets you do. You can do multi-room audio, the same audio in multiple rooms, right? And it's all synchronized.
Well, you're supposed to be able to.
well, we'll get to that. But so they have a new press release talking about how they're really trying to get their stuff in. Normally we think of these technologies as being in little wireless speakers, right? Or maybe in a receiver, or maybe in a soundbar. But they are really pushing to put this into TVs. And I got a demo from them. Oh my God. I was still living in LA. It must have been at least like 3 years ago, talking about kind of the same thing. And I just have to, they have some data here. You want data?
Let's get data, baby.
Because here on the Audio
Unleashed
podcast, we like data.
Yeah.
But we also have the capacity to analyze and judge data. Yeah. So, Dennis, I'm going to let you analyze and judge some data for me here. Help me figure this out.
Okay.
According to a recent consumer survey by DTS PlayFi, 71% of respondents are more likely to purchase a TV that supports wireless surround sound speakers compared with a TV that does not support this feature. And additionally, 58% of respondents are more likely to purchase a TV that can be used as part of a whole home music system. Now, does that data really ring with you? Does that really?
I want to point out
make
something
a good
specific
case to you.
I want to point out something that you just glossed right over. According to a recent consumer survey by DTS PlayFi.
Well, there's that.
So let me ask you a question.
How were those questions phrased?
Yes, there might have been some push pulling here. So let me ask you a question, Brent.
Yeah. Okay.
Have you ever been able to get DTS PlayFi to successfully work and connect to your network and reliably stream out of the box first try?
Not that I can recall. Nor on the second try or any try.
I have not either. So according to a recent consumer survey by Audio Unleashed, 0% of respondents were able to get DTS PlayFi to do jack all.
Okay. All right. That kudos. That was brilliant. So, but when I was reading this, I was thinking if you did a survey about people who were going to buy a car, and you said, would you be more likely to purchase a car that has, automatic tire washers? People would probably be like, I don't know, I guess. Whatever.
Sure, yeah.
It's like, you get an extra. Would you be more likely to purchase a thing with an extra feature? Well, yeah, maybe. I guess.
Yeah.
And
or you could also ask, hey, would a TV that supports wireless surround sound speakers, would that keep you from buying the TV? And if they're like, no, it wouldn't keep me buying from the TV, they're like,
this is just a bunch of baloney. Whereas our survey is highly meaningful, despite its extremely small sample size.
N equals 2. Yep.
So the problem here, I mean, I'll confess that is kind of a conflict of interest here. I actually, when PlayFi was just launching, and DTS bought a little company called Phorus, Phorus, that had this technology.
Yeah.
And normally, like I'll just say, having worked for Dolby, when Dolby buys a company, a little company that has some technology, right? The Dolby engineers like go onto it and investigate it and, fine tune it and make it so it can work better with a wide variety of products. I don't get the impression DTS did this in any way, because they sent me, here's the thing is I got a gig I was hired by a marketing consultant who was working for them, and they sent me to write something or another. And I dealt with the guy. I never dealt with them. And I think he paid me. I don't think they actually paid me. Anyway, but they sent me some of the early Forest stuff. I couldn't get it to work. I mean, I tried and tried, couldn't get it to work. I have since reviewed, not as many as you, but, I've gotten a couple of Philips soundbars in recently. And, they're pretty good soundbars. They have Play-Fi. I can't get it to work.
Yeah.
And over and over, usually what happens is the app hangs up. You're trying to do the setup and the app starts, the app gets to some point and it just hangs up and it won't go any further. That's the problem I have always had.
I've had 3 different home networks over the course of DTS Play-Fi's life. The first one, when I first started reviewing the stuff, was just a Cisco router with Wi-Fi built in that I bought from Best Buy. Couldn't get it to reliably work, and they were like, well, it's your router's fault. I'm like, all right, maybe. The next time I reviewed Play-Fi, I had a $9,000 enterprise-grade networking solution with Cisco integrated services, routers, Ruckus wireless access points, all of it designed and engineered by Access Networks. DTS Play-Fi was the only networking product that I ever had trouble with on that network. Yeah. Then, that outlived its purposes, and now I've got an Asus mesh network system, which works great with everything but Play-Fi. I got new Play-Fi gear last year in for review, and try to set it up with wired Ethernet connection because, I was raised right. And it was like, I don't know what you're doing. It's like, I can't do this. You got to do Wi-Fi. And I'm like, all right. So I went to my 5 gigahertz network, and it's like, I don't know, man. I can't do that. I can't connect to this network. You've got a 2.4 gigahertz network. Can I connect to that? And I'm like, yeah, sure. Connect to that. It connected instantly. And then I tried to play music, and it's like, hey, you're connected to a 2.4 gigahertz network. Did you know that? You've got a 5 gigahertz. We can't do high res over 2.4. Do you want to connect to your 5? And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, we can't. Like, I can't connect to it. And it's just like, oh, you evil. It's almost like Gru from Despicable Me designed the app. And it's just, what's sad about it is the product I was reviewing was amazing and kind of didn't need Play-Fi. It's got HDMI, it's got Chromecast, it's got AirPlay 2, it's got all of this. Play-Fi is almost just like sort of a blemish on the product, an otherwise amazing product, but you don't need it. Who cares? So because I think when Play-Fi came out, people were hungry for an alternative to Sonos because Sonos is proprietary. And, you can't say, oh, I'm Joe Blow audio product maker. I'm going to put Sonos in my products. Well, tough luck. With an extremely small number of exceptions, I think. But you could buy, you could license DTS Play-Fi and dump it into your products, and it wasn't, I guess, super hard. And they had the app all, I was going to say ready to go, but whatever. They had an app that you could get, and so manufacturers were really hungry for that. And but now, of course, we have Google Chromecast, we have AirPlay 2, we have Amazon Alexa, which people often tend to forget that Alexa, besides being a voice command system, is also a multi-room audio technology. Yeah. So there's a lot of options out there, and there are products that have Play-Fi that also have these other technologies in there too, which is fine. Then you don't have to use Play-Fi. Yeah. But so I tend to try to give people the benefit of the doubt. But I've just been to. I've had so many Play-Fi products for 10 years and just haven't gotten any of them to work, and I'm not willing to give them the benefit of the doubt anymore. Why don't you get your technology working and then come to me? Oh, I personally think DTS Play-Fi is responsible for the vinyl revival.
I thought it was Michael Fremer.
Oh yeah. Well, it's maybe
And
they
he was
teamed up.
single-handedly responsible for it
Yeah.
because of his charming prose.
Yeah. So anyway, this whole thing of them building it into TVs, it looks like it's going to be a twofold thing. One, you'll be able to stream Play-Fi content to your, so you'll be able to stream whatever services Play-Fi supports to your TV. And also you'll be able to add wireless surround speakers to your TV. If it works, and maybe one day one wireless speaker will work and the next day the other one will work or something to that effect. But yeah, that's the whole premise. And I don't know. I'm trying to figure out like how many people they would have had to in their survey to get 71% of respondents, but I'm guessing their end probably wasn't very large. It was likely family members.
Well, yeah, and plus since they did the survey themselves, the questions were probably loaded, and they're just showing this to manufacturer and say, hey, blah 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 blah, and granted, I think it would be nice to have more of this stuff built into TVs. You could have a whole surround sound system just built into your TV rather than, or have your TV made automatically with a sound bar, made automatically with a 5.1 system or whatever. And I think that would be nice. However, the system has to work first.
Yes.
So otherwise, because I'm just at the point now where I'm like, why should I even try to get this working? Every time I do, I waste an hour or two and I give up.
You know why I keep doing it? Because one of these days it is going to work, and man, that is going to feel so good. It's going to be like Charlie Brown finally kicking the ball.
Did he ever kick the ball?
I don't think he ever kicked the ball.
So I would say Charlie Brown would probably been a lot better just giving up.
That's a good point. Well, anyway, I think we've run this one into the ground, man. You want to
We've given up.
Yeah, we have given up. You want to take a quick break and get some water?
Take a break. Okay, right, water time.
We'll be right back.
And we're back. This is Audio
Unleashed.
And we, in our second segment, are going to talk about another press release that we get. People keep sending us press releases and we keep talking. I guess that's what the whole idea of press releases is.
I guess so yeah.
Wow, I just realized that.
This one came from Daryl Wilkinson. He sent it to me. Yeah,
friend of the podcast and one of our patrons.
Yeah.
And a friend of ours personally for 20 years or something like that.
Yeah.
And so it's a demonstration or I don't know what you call this.
Let's call it an experience.
An
experience. Yeah.
Presented in London for the first time at the Listen Gallery. That's LISSON, not LISTEN. Listen Gallery in London. And this guy who is described here as a Brooklyn-based speaker sculptor and sound guru, Devin Turnbull, a.k.a. And we were debating about how it's OJAS. And I was thinking it was pronounced OHAS because like California, Ojai, OJAI is Ojai. And maybe this is OHAS.
Yeah.
And that would be the proper, if this was in Spanish.
But it's Sanskrit. Yeah.
Yes, which neither you nor I speak Sanskrit.
Oh, I just looked it up. It's Ojas.
Ojas. That's how they say it in Sanskrit? Wait.
Well, that's according to the internet, and the internet has never lied about anything, so.
Okay, wait. Is Sanskrit like just a written language, or is it spoken?
I don't think it's spoken anymore.
I think I should probably know what that is.
We should have researched this.
I don't. I've only been alive for 61 years.
It is the sacred language of Hinduism. The language of classical Hindu philosophy and of historical texts of Buddhism and Jainism. Yeah.
Right. Okay. But I think it's not really spoken. It's written more now. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So anyway, it's a Sanskrit term that loosely translates to life vitality. And this calls into question, though, do we need creative pseudonyms?
Yeah, but we should have to give them to each other.
Yeah, or we should ask our patrons.
Oh, yeah. There you go. Bump you up to
our
the
listeners.
At the $5 tier, you can give us pseudonyms.
Yeah. Oh, man. Man, our
Funny.
business model is just man.
We're leaving money on the floor. Yeah.
We are, man. Anyway, so I actually was first turned on to this guy by our good friend Steve Guttenberg, famed New York-based, Brooklyn-based audio writer, because Steve likes a lot of these sort of, I'll call it the artsy craftsy approach to audio, artisanal audio.
Yeah, yeah.
A lot of little boutique companies, and so this guy makes these speakers that are, very similar to like the old Altics and JBLs that you found in theaters.
Movie theaters, yeah.
But, 50, 60, 70 years ago. And they have, generally multicellular horns on top for the mid-range and treble. And then, a big sort of high efficiency, lightweight cone woofer in a big box. So he's displaying them at this place, and the idea is that you come in and you listen to the sound, and he has a presentation that involves, some Blue Note records and stuff like that. And he's been doing this in New York for quite some time, but now he's doing it in London. It's called Hi-Fi Listening Room Dream Number 1, a purpose-built space. Oh, he created a purpose-built space. Although it's just a room with hi-fi gear. I'm not sure how much purpose there is in that. Or how much intent. Intent is the word that we're supposed to use nowadays.
Oh, okay.
But anyway, so he put together this system so people go listen to this, and it's a whole experience. And if you go onto his website, he even or this listen gallery, they even sell like a special incense burner that's designed to integrate seamlessly with the audio system to create the desired mood, because scent is part of the mood, I guess, and that's fine.
We should read this description because this is great. For $275 plus VAT, right? Mind you, you get this incense burner. Here's the description. When considering a space for listening to recorded music, nothing can be overlooked. The source material, hardware, room, acoustics, and ambience, including smell, are all part of one system. This incense burner was designed to seamlessly integrate into the Hi-Fi Listening Room Dream Number 1. That's a quote from Devin Turnbull. Okay. So, yeah.
Does it work with other audio systems? Is my question.
Well, it said it was specifically designed to seamlessly integrate into this system.
So if you try to get it to work with other audio systems, it's kind of like Play-Fi.
Yeah. This is the Play-Fi of incense burners. Wow.
We shouldn't say that. I'm sure it's a perfectly fine incense burner. It's like a couple $100, right?
275 pounds plus VAT. Yeah.
But I'm reading the press release, and this guy certainly sounds interesting.
He seems like a cool cat.
I don't have any problem with this whole thing, but I'll get to that. But I did find one thing that raises an interesting audio trivia question in his background that you are going to not get. But I will dazzle you with the answer. Okay. So he was raised by former Transcendental Meditation teachers. His family relocated from New York to a remote town in Iowa where he attended the Maharishi School.
Ooh.
Now, you may remember that there was a presidential candidate, the guy who founded that school. I can't remember his name, John somebody, who actually ran for president.
Oh, no, I don't remember that.
But in audio, the same guy is better known as the very first manufacturer to create what?
I don't have a clue. I am stumped completely.
that company, and I sure can't remember the name of the company now. They made like some high end. They made like, I think maybe like a high end preamp and a high end DAC and some electronics, right? I mean, fine stuff. Weirdly enough, they were the first ones to come out with a Dolby Digital decoder.
Oh, wow.
Weirdly enough. And that has to be from my time at Dolby. I can tell you the first person to come out with a new Dolby thing that's not usually like a technological tour de force. It means your hardware is compatible with it.
Right. Yeah.
So I guess they were able to do this, although I don't think they had a surround decoder at the time. So they had to build something, but clearly they had a handle on it. And I remember when I was at Home Theater Magazine, we got this thing in and it was like $5,000 or something, right? And
this is when you had to do with RF, right?
Yeah, off of a Laserdisc.
Yeah.
And you had to have a doohickey to, like $1,000 doohickey to convert the signals from the Laserdisc into something that a Dolby Digital decoder could handle. And I got to say, it was awesome. We were just like, oh my God, this is so much better than ProLogic. This is just incredible.
Yeah.
Which it was. But
I
yeah,
remember
so they were the first.
when I was shopping for Laserdisc, I had to decide whether to get a flipper or one with Dolby Digital capabilities, and I went with the flipper. So,
wow.
Yeah.
But we should say, so these speakers, this is kind of typical of what I'll call there's a community in Brooklyn that is Brooklyn based. That I guess extends all around the world, but it's Brooklyn based.
We talked about that in our old podcast, the whole the church whatever thing, the guy that did the piece in the magazine.
The artisanal hi-fi community.
Yeah.
And Steve Guttenberg is, I think, Steve Guttenberg is not an acolyte of anybody, but he finds it interesting at least and kind of writes about it sometimes and sometimes reviews those products. And, you could say like Devore Fidelity is part of that, although I think Devore Fidelity's engineering is a lot more sort of mainstream than some of this stuff. And if you look at the pictures from this thing, it's all these tube amps that have, very low output because all these horn speakers have very, very high sensitivity. So you don't need a lot of power. And these big, very clunky looking speakers with multicellular horns. And by a multicellular horn, the biggest model has like 15 different cells on the horn.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and then they have a big subwoofer that looks like super, super low mass, like a paper cone sub. And it's all kind of painted gray. And it looks they actually do look a lot like the old, Altic voice of the theater speakers.
Yeah.
Not exactly, but similar vibe, that kind of industrial look, because those were meant to go behind movie screens.
What was the movie from the 80s where you actually get to look behind the screen of a movie theater? Was that Gremlins? Where you get to see like Snow White from the backside. So I think people have seen speakers like this, if they've ever seen Gremlins. Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, he's got them set up and he's got some sort of hand-built tube gear and what looks like a hand-built turntable and a big reel-to-reel tape deck and some what looks like single-ended triode tube amps that probably put out, 6 or 8 watts. And, the claim is that this is somehow a truer music experience than what you and by the way, no acoustic treatment that I can see in the room. Is that correct?
None. No ceiling treatments. The walls are all just very flat, what looks to be just straight up sheetrock or maybe even, I don't know.
It's kind of hard to tell. You can't really see the sidewalls, I think.
Yeah.
But I don't see much there.
No.
Anyway, so it's very kind of Spartan and
the seating is all like you have to sit like cross-legged and there's like a seat back, but yeah.
So that alone would destroy my ability to concentrate on the music. I would not be able to be intentional.
Yeah.
My intention would be to get the hell out of there. Get into a real chair.
Yeah. Let me ask you this though.
Yeah.
Do you...
Yeah,
I may be wrong about this. Maybe set me straight. But to me, I think this just a presentation and experience like this reinforces the wrong message. It reinforces the message that hi-fi is a thing of the past. It's a thing for you to come experience in a museum. It's almost like, there's a current tour, like a Pink Floyd tour called Their Mortal Remains, where, you just get to see all of these artifacts of Pink Floyd, and I want to go see it, but it makes it very clear, like, Pink Floyd is over, man. Like, this is what remains of the band. And to me, this is sort of like that. This is like, hey, like, this is a thing that people used to do. They used to sit in a room and listen to speakers. And isn't that quaint and archaic? And I know there's all of this language about the experience and the spirituality and all of that. But to me, it just makes all of this seem very irrelevant.
That's a valid opinion, I think.
We have a shop. It's not here in Montgomery. It's in another city in the Tri-City area called Prattville, 15 minutes away. It's a shop called Classic Audio and Records, I think. And on the third Sunday of every month, they have listening parties. And dude, you can't get in the door.
Really?
and they have sales on new and used vinyl, and sometimes they sell a lot of like new vinyl equipment, but they also sell vintage audio, vintage receivers and things like that. And at these listening parties, there's just no walking room. Like, good luck getting to the record rack you want to look at. But there are people sitting on couches, listening to proper hi-fi setups and trading music with one another. Oh, hey, let's listen to that. Hey, I just bought this record, man. Can I put it on the record player? And it is vibrant and it is exciting, and people are buzzing and eating, pigs in blankets and cupcakes. And it is a party that happens every single month, and it is vibrant, and I think it is the antithesis of this museum exhibit, right? So,
well, you haven't been to this. You haven't picked up on the vibe.
Well, I'm seeing pictures of the vibe, and it's very.
Well, I know, but they got like 3 people posing in there.
It's very funereal,
It's not and it's also not like an event. It's like it's showing. They're doing this for X amount of time at this art gallery,
right?
And so it's more like people might come in and check it out, but it's just going to be a few people. It's not going to be like, oh, let's have a bunch of beer and pigs in a blanket, and or whatever they call pigs in a blanket in London. And I have to say though, I don't have any problem with this thing. And I mean, look, this kind of gear absolutely does not sound as true to the musical intent as just a good set of normal speakers and a good normal amp, right? Absolutely does not. It doesn't. This gear significantly colors the sound. So at Innovative Audio up in Vancouver, where our good friend Gordon Soak runs one of the, I think probably the world's biggest vintage audio stores, they restore some of these speakers like this, some of the old Altics and JBLs. And he finds them in like old movie theaters, and then, brings them back to their original spec and gets them all working in it, all that sort of thing, and refinishes them. And they look actually really cool. It's funny. I was in the store with audio legend Bob Carver, very, very famous amp and speaker designer. Yeah. And, and we're listening to these things, and he's like, these have like a built-in tone control, right? I'm like, what are you talking about? He says, the sound changes when because the horn is fairly controlled dispersion, right? And so he says the sound changes, the balance changes a lot as you move away from the speaker.
Oh,
and he was showing me this, and we started at one part and started walking back. He's like, it's like a tone control. Where you sit in the room, your distance from the speaker is effectively a tone control.
Interesting.
Which I did not realize, but he was right. I tried it. And
so in some respects, it's like kind of acts like the opposite of a line array, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
Cool.
Exactly. And so I think, and look, if people want to buy these things and it makes them listen to more music and they dig the vibe of the gear, I think that's perfectly okay. I'm resistant to. I mean, they make like everybody else in high-end audio, they make claims about how true they are to the music and the blah, blah, something, yada, 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 language that's just forklifted from some other high-end audio press release or from the Absolute Sound or God knows what. And that's what I don't have the patience for. But this is, in a way, this is celebrating. I mean, it's celebrating gear, right?
And 275-pound incense burners.
Yeah. So, by 275 pounds, you mean English pounds, not
English, but yes,
pounds
pounds sterling.
They don't weigh 275 pounds.
Right. Pound sterling. Sorry.
Right. Because, they wouldn't probably need to.
Yeah.
That would be a pretty high-end incense burner if it weighed 275 pounds. It'd be like crafted from, machined from aluminum block or something like that.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
let's not give the high-end audio industry any more ideas.
Oh boy. Oh man.
I gotta say though, I kind of like this, and I think it's perfectly okay, and I think it's fun, and I think it's, look, am I in tune with the Brooklyn artisanal audio vibe? Quite often not, because they tend to embrace gear that doesn't work especially well, that has especially speakers. I mean, they embrace often speakers that have significant colorations.
Yeah.
And they make a lot of assumptions like, a low wattage tube amp is always better than, a high wattage amp, which, just give me the evidence, give me the evidence. We've had these things for decades, and show me the evidence in a listening test, blind listening test.
Yeah.
Not some guy sitting around in his underwear, not matching his levels, knowing what he's listening to.
You know what I think would be fun though? This
What's
session
that?
where you get to build a speaker out of the kits that he's selling. So these kits are 1,800 British pounds plus VAT. And they're, you could just buy the kit if you want to and put together the speaker. And maybe it's not the kind of speaker that I would love. It's 8-inch coaxial driver and whatever, but it looks cool. I think it would be a really neat experience to go through the whole process of just building one, though. I think that would be super fun.
But it looks to me like you're really just building the cabinet, and the cabinet's all pre-machined. You're basically gluing together a cabinet.
Yeah.
And I'm going to guess, since this is a coaxial speaker, it probably, the crossover is going to be integral to the speaker. I'm just guessing. So it's not going to be like you're designing a crossover for a speaker or anything like that.
No, no. But it would still be a neat arts and crafts experience.
Sure, why the hell not, man?
Yeah.
If you want to go all the way to London.
Well, I mean, I'm just saying, if you're in London, drop by. I mean, it would be a cooler experience than the, BS my wife ropes me into, where we go drink wine and paint Starry Night. It's given the choice between that and this, I think I'd like to glue some speaker cabinets together. So. Okay, I think we can safely call this a digression. What are we talking about? We're talking about going and taking a break and getting some water. That's what we're talking about.
Let's go take a break and come back and talk about AI.
Yeah. This is Dennis.
And this is Brent. And this is Audio
Unleashed.
What are we here to talk about now?
In this segment, we're going to be talking about a paper that I came across in PLOS One, Public Library of Science, which is a thing I explained in the intro as a journal where usually normal people can go and read scientific research, peer-reviewed scientific research, which is not always easy to get your hands on. So this was a paper published recently called, let me scroll. Sorry. Warning. Humans cannot reliably detect speech deepfakes.
And what's that? What do they mean by that exactly?
So I think most people are probably familiar with deepfake technology where you take like an image or a video and replace somebody's face or something like that. But they're specifically talking about taking and building a library of recordings of someone's voice and using generative adversarial networks to basically sample that and synthesize that voice. And then you can take in and do text to speech and you hear, like I said in the intro, Brent Butterworth saying the Grateful Dead's the best band ever and I love the Eagles. Yeah. And it sounds like you. And so there have been a lot of papers like, how hard is it to detect this? And they wanted to do something a little more sound methodologically. And this group, which is, Kimberly T. Mai, Sergey Bray, Toby Davis, and Lewis Griffin. They had a group of, 529 people, and the experiments were run in English and Mandarin just to make sure that language didn't make a difference. And they split both the English groups and the Mandarin groups into two subgroups, one of them a unary group and the other a binary group. And so basically one group would be presented with one audio clip at a time. And they would be asked, can you tell if this was a real human being or fake? And in the second configuration, they would be presented with two audio clips of the same speech, one of them synthesized and one of them read by an actual human being. And they would have to decide which one was synthesized. Oh. Now, in that second group, it turns out people were able to detect the deep fakes 73% of the time.
That's pretty good.
27% of the time they couldn't, but still they think even that's concerning, right? And the reason I guess it's concerning is because these people knew they were in a scientific study to determine whether or not they could detect deepfakes, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's one of the methodological problems that they admitted in this. But yeah, I mean, if you're just, watching the news and some famous figure is caught on tape saying something really wild, like, it's not as easy as you would hope it be to detect it. And I think in the unary tests, they did even worse. There was one point I wanted to read this one passage that I highlighted. So there was a familiarization treatment that they did that they were able to increase everybody's detection accuracy by 3.84% on average. But the thing is, with a unary setting, it only brought the accuracy up to just over 50%, right? I can't remember the exact number, but it was like 52.31%, right? If they were just provided one clip and said, is this synthesized AI voice or is this a real person speaking? So I don't know, man. This is all, I've told you before, one of the reasons that I dig into all of this is because I'm scared of it, right? And when I'm afraid of something, I want to understand it. I don't want to just react to headlines. I really want to study it, which is one of the reasons I've gotten into generative AI art so much, because I want to wrap my brain around the way it works. But I'm kind of in the weeds here. I think you are less in the weeds. So I think it may be more informative to get your gut reaction to this. Like, what do you think about this?
Well, as a human being, I'm worried about it, and I worry about it. I mean, I had to tell my mom a while back because I've heard that people are doing this with like kids' voices, and they get your voice on, especially if you're someone like one of the hosts of the Audio
Unleashed
podcast, well, there's all these recordings of you out there, and people can grab your voice and make a deep fake telling your mom to send $10,000 or something. And I had to tell my mom, who is 91 and still very much in possession of her faculties, thank God. I had to tell her, look, Mom, just I'm a my voice is out there in all these recordings all over the internet, and so if someone calls sounds like me and asks you for money, it's not me. I'm never going to ask you for money. Never. Never. My question for you is, though, how do you think this pertains to audio, to what we do?
Well, I mean, there's a concept called the information silo, and I am in one with regard to AI. There's no doubt that I'm very plugged into this. And so I may have a skewed perspective, but from my perspective, one of the biggest songs of the summer was a song by Drake called Heart on My Sleeve.
Okay.
Probably the best song that Drake has done in 10, 15 years. Drake had nothing to do with it. Dude wrote the lyrics with ChatGPT and used a voice vocoder similar to this. It wasn't text to speech, it was voice to voice, and basically just recreated Drake, right? And so it was Drake and the Weeknd song, right? And like, by the time the record label took it down, I mean, I think it had been streamed like 300 million times or something. It was on Spotify. It was on Apple Music. It was on YouTube.
I actually, I have a question for you.
Okay.
We were talking about, and this is more relevant to, I think, the audio that our listeners might be interested in. What if, so like we were talking about Yes before. So like kind of the dream of a lot of Yes, and a lot of Yes fans consider the Yes album, Fragile and Close to the Edge, should be the great Yes albums. And what if you could create a new Yes album that, instead of becoming, their next album was Tales from Topographic Oceans, which a lot of people consider unlistenable. I would be one of those. What if you could have an AI and tell the AI, hey, make a fourth Yes album in the same genre as these three classic Yes albums, but just to also vary it up a little bit, so it's not just more of exactly the same. Add a 5% influence from the Mahavishnu Orchestra, and add a 5% influence from Dwight Yoakam, who wasn't even wasn't even like, he was a kid when those albums came out, and or The Weeknd or whoever, right? And you could make that fourth Yes album that Yes fans would love to have, which Yes can no longer do that because so many of the people, I mean, hardly any of them talk to each other anymore. So could you do something like that? And if you could do that, would that be good? Would that be satisfying?
I don't know. I mean, you can't yet, but the problem is trying to predict when we will be able to do that is nearly impossible. I just can't wrap my brain around how quickly all of this stuff is developing. I mean, the generative adversarial network that they used in this study was VITS. And dude, it was, I think it was developed in 2021. It's already outdated.
Wow.
The image generation tools that I use. I mean, you look at images that I generate today based on images I generated 5 months ago, and the ones 5 months ago look like something a kid should be hanging on their refrigerator door by comparison. So it's impossible to say like when we're going to get to that point, but I think you would be really, really naive to think that we won't get to that point. I mean, for goodness sake, Paul McCartney is releasing a new duet with John Lennon this year, using AI. So
shall we wrap this thing up?
let's wrap it up, baby.
Okay.
We should say that this has been a Butterburger production. We're not changing that yet, despite your protestations.
It has.
We've got Cardell working on another production company name for us, but it's not working yet. It's not working yet. So
I like it.
Yeah, and
the music. Well, the music is probably going to be one tune by the Butterburger house band, and perhaps one tune by. It'll be by me, and if you hear a saxophone on it, it's Ron Cyger, who's my bandmate in the band that was formerly called Take Two, but I think we're calling it Cyger and Butterworth now.
Oh, cool. All right, man. Well, hey, patrons, stick around. We got another segment for you. Boy, we're running long with this one, man. I'm glad you're editing this one.
Thanks for pointing that out. Yes, edited by Brent Butterworth, laboriously edited by Brent Butterworth, with probably the help of a lot of alcoholic beverages.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks, everybody. We will see you in a couple of weeks. And like I said, patrons, stick around. Got one more segment for you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye. Hey, thanks for sticking around to the end. If you liked what you heard and wish there'd been a little bit more of it, we got some good news for you.
Indeed, we do. If you check out patreon.com/Audio Unleashed, all one word, you can get new episodes a little earlier than everybody else.
And sometimes it's like a day or two early. Sometimes it's nearly a week. We never really know until we start editing.
But the big plus is that you get extended cuts of every episode. And usually that's going to mean a whole extra segment that's about maybe a geekier topic or something that's a little more personal to us, or something that's just going to really appeal to the hardcore Audio Unleashed listener.
Yeah, what it boils down to is if you're somebody who would support Audio Unleashed on Patreon, we're going to make sure the bonuses to every episode are really aimed straight at your interests.
Yeah, and so if you want to hear these segments, you can subscribe to our Patreon for $3 a month, which is less than I spend every single day on my cup of coffee when I go to Starbucks to write my boring articles.
Yeah. One more time with that URL, that's patreon.com/Audio Unleashed.
Or Audio
Unleashed. Yeah. Thanks.
Thanks, everybody.